Okay, I wanted to talk about the different ways. God's ways are higher, his thoughts are higher, everything is higher. But I wanted to give you an example that there was our pastor in Australia, and one of his right-hand man had an out. They just had an argument, and they used to meet for hours and hours and discuss things and do things together. It was wonderful. Well, one day the enemy just kind of got in there, and an offense came. Okay. So here we have these two men, and neither of them is going to say, I'm sorry. Right. Let's work it out. Okay. So here's Carolyn running back and forth between the two of them and saying, okay, here's the word. This is what the word says. The word said, if you have anything against another person, they in the King James, I think they call it an ought, O-U-G-H. If it's right. Anything, you go back to the base word, anything against another person, you go and you repent. You repent to God, you repent to each other, and just work things out. Well, unfortunately, they didn't work things out. The man left the church. The pastor ended up quitting his ministry, and he got out of no longer a pastor anywhere. So that was a very, very sad story and a awakening for me. But if you think about the world, say, for instance, you have a car accident. And Japan, they put it by percentages. Okay, you're 50-50, you're 20-80, they measure by who has more fault. But right. That's not God's measuring stick. No. God's measuring stick is he does not want any disharmony. He wants people to work in unity and harmony. And this is why you confess. One of the reasons you confess to God, confess to each other when you have some problems, because just say, I'm sorry, because you're out. We're not going by world standards. We're going by God's standards. And God says he does not want any disunity. And I had a really difficult time at one time in my life. I had a problem with a person. I went into deep depression for 6 months. She was my best friend, and that's just, I'm not going to go into the circumstances, but she had left our house in a huff because I didn't do thus and such and whatever according to what she wanted me to do. And so 6 months I was in depression, and then I was, in spite of never wanting to get out of bed, which I had to anyway, but oh yes. Yeah, I as I was reading the word, then I came into one section of the word that says, hey, if you have a problem with somebody, just go directly to them. That's right. And so I went directly to her and knocked on the door, and but there's more that the word said, but I first tried the knock on the door, and she opened the door partially. I said, what do you want? I said, well, I want you. I said, I am so sorry for the pain I caused you. I am, that's really hurt my heart that I caused you so much pain, and I really want to be friends again. And she said, not interested. You don't care that you blah, 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 blah type thing. And I said, that's not the point. I said, how about if we get thus and such a mutual friend? How about if I bring her over and we just sit down and talk about things together? Maybe we can resolve some things, because she's mature and she loves the word, loves the Lord. No. And I said, well, how about if we get with the pastor? No, not going to get with the pastor. And I said, okay, how about if the two of us go to church and we just kneel down at the altar and talk to God and talk to each other and just resolve this? I said, I really want you, we've both been hurt, and that doesn't make God happy. And I said, we've been friends for years. I still want to be friends. And you know what happened on my side is that the depression lifted, completely lifted. But she stayed one angry dude. You know, she just,
Ouch.
ouch, absolutely ouch. And I wouldn't go through all the challenges she had along the way. And one time she came knocking on my door, and it was years later. And she said, Carolyn? And I said, yes, because every time we saw each other in church, she headed off in a different direction. And then she left the church to a different church. That's how bad it was. But yeah, it was painful. But one time she came, and it was years later. And she said, you know, I decided life was too short to carry stuff like this.
That's
and
right.
I said, great. And ever since then, we've been the best of friends again.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's wonderful.